Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to pick up on an exchange between a producer in the wine industry who said that her business and others are being shafted by Brexit, and the Environment Secretary who tried to defend the benefits of Brexit and was laughed at by the members of the public in the audience. Are we starting to learn, albeit very slowly? Are we realising that Brexit is just a mystery box of lies and pain? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, yes, saw an interesting clip from Question Time, the BBC. This is the show that has allowed Brexiteers to tell their lies without correction for years now. This week seemed to be no different, but although the bias from the host, Fiona Bruce, does not seem to be changing, the reaction from the audience is. Now, I'd like to remind people that Question Time, or for those who don't know, they confirmed last year, Fiona Bruce confirmed in a programme that they choose their audiences to have a pro-Brexit bias. They do this deliberately. The justification for this is this spurious bias is that, well, a majority of voters voted for Brexit in 2016, so they should be a majority of our audience. Never mind that a majority of voters was very far from a majority of the public. This audience is supposed to represent the public, but also, it represented about a quarter of the public. Also, never mind that attitudes can change over time. Never mind that a majority voted for entry into the European community in the 70s. Never mind that a majority voted against parties standing for Brexit without another referendum at the last general election. So, and this is important, the majority of the audience are people who have to state on their application, presumably, that they voted for Brexit. Not quite sure what that means for people who didn't vote at all or were too young to vote. Maybe they allow a small quota in. But important point for what happened with this question from a member of the audience. So she began by saying that Brexit was crippling industry in the UK. That was her opening line. She said that she worked in Bristol in wine manufacturing in some capacity. She cited daily problems with Brexit. So daily problems. Not too many problems, not problems I have to deal with too often. Daily. Every single day. She was quite clear on that point. Problems with delays. Problems with paperwork, problems with fees. And she said she got no help from anyone in government on how to manage it. Now, bear in mind that the government keep boasting that they've funded advisors to help businesses. An obvious lie, because there simply aren't enough officials to give personalised help to every business that needs it in the UK. In addition, even if there were enough, there are no actual solutions for many businesses with our hard Brexit. There is a reason why, when countries negotiate trade terms, they work towards closer alignment with their most important markets. We are unique, absolutely unique. We are the only country in peacetime to have implemented higher trade barriers. So then the Cabinet Minister for DEFRA, George Eustace, he was invited to answer. Now, I'll get onto his lies in a moment. But for the first thing he said was that the main thing that came with Brexit was the freedom to make laws that work for us. That's what he said. And the audience laughed. Remember, this is an audience that is specifically chosen to have a majority of Brexit voting members of the public. They laughed. Maybe it was only the pro-Remain part of the audience that laughed. Do I know that every audience member laughed? No. Do I know that the ones who'd voted for Brexit laughed? No, I don't. But here's the thing. There was a time when talking about Brexit freedoms on Question Time would have got a round of applause from the portion of the audience that voted Brexit. It was a bit like just saying 9/11 in America. You just had to say Brexit and people would clap like seals. Oh, yeah, getting our freedom back, sovereignty in it. Oh, yeah, they'd get the support there. Even if we suppose that the only people who laughed were those against Brexit from the very start, what were the majority of the audience who voted Brexit doing? Nothing. No applause, not even a murmur of approval. They may have been laughing, but they were certainly not applauding and they were certainly not expressing any approval. Nothing. All we heard was laughter. And I want to come back to that. But first, what Eustace said. He actually said a number of things, but in terms of Brexit, a couple of lies. He said that when he worked for DEFRA, when the UK was in the EU, he was constrained. All the time he was constrained because 80% of our laws were dumped on us by the EU. Not even remotely true. It is true that government departments are expected to implement EU laws, but EU laws are made by EU member states. The UK is an EU member state. In fact, the UK came up with or strongly supported over 90% of all EU laws. Because, frankly, it's impossible for the EU to legislate for anything without the support of its largest and most powerful members. At the time, that was the UK, France and Germany. Now it's just France and Germany who will mostly decide the laws that we will still have to follow in future if we wish to have any trade in Europe. But never mind that now. The point is that Eustace didn't just mislead, but told an outright lie. Was he pulled up by the host, Fiona Bruce? No, not a bit of it. This programme has been pro-Brexit mouthpiece for years. It kept giving Nigel Farage a regular slot. Why? They said it's because he was an elected representative. Okay, fair enough. He was an MEP after all. So why did they never put up pro-European MEPs then? Why were they never given a slot? I mean, the majority of British MEPs were pro-EU, don't matter what party they represented. Why weren't any of them invited on? Some of them complained. Some of them said they should have been on. Didn't get on. Oh, well, reasons. And for years, they've also failed to pull up guests when telling lies about Brexit. They still don't even now. George Eustace then seemed to concede that trade with Europe has indeed been knackered by Brexit. But apparently it's worth it because apart from anything else, Europe is not the whole world. Here's the thing though. In terms of global trade, it is pretty massive. Like when you talk about GDP, the EU is the second largest in the world, second to the United States. The United States is an absolute beast of a powerhouse. However, when it comes to the value of global trade, the EU represents a quarter of that total world trade in terms of imports and exports combined by value. Even more than the United States, 10% more in fact. This is why you simply cannot ignore trade with the EU. You cannot compensate by better trade deals elsewhere. And we don't even have better trade deals elsewhere. Our trade deal with Japan is on less good terms than the one we have, that the EU have with them. Like even the government know this. Whenever they're asked about it, they keep trying to compare our Japanese trade deal with the trading arrangements the EU had before the trade deal with Japan. But that's not how it works. Compare it with what they've got now. The EU have a deal with Japan. You can't compare it with how it was years ago. We all know what British businesses, especially farmers, think of the Australia trade deal. We're not getting anywhere with the US trade deal, and even when we do, that won't be any good for us either. We're not getting better trade deals, and even if we did, the extra costs of transport, dealing with dozens of different national regulations, all of this would prevent our goods being competitive enough, and that's even if these other countries wanted to massively increase the amount of our goods that they wanted to import from us. You know, when we traded with the single market as members, we had the same regulations. We produced a thing and then we sold it. No mountains of paperwork to prove that it complied with the importing market because it was the same market where it was produced, so it was the same standards. Even with a trade deal, you still have to stump up the paperwork to sell to other countries, and that is assuming that the other countries both wanted to buy more of our goods and had the money to do so. Most countries, the vast majority of countries by our standards, are very poor. They do not have the consumer spending power that the wealthy countries of Europe do. It's utter madness. But here's where there's a more optimistic look. Question time may not have changed. They still allowed a Minister of State to lie without being pulled up. They will presumably continue to do so. They did it before Brexit, they're doing it after Brexit. But the reaction from the audience tells of a public seeing the Brexit lies. Yes, they didn't represent a large section of the public. It was a few people in a television studio. But it was chosen to have a pro-Brexit bias, very deliberately so. And it still laughed at the idea that we had gained Brexit freedoms. What they heard was a businesswoman talking about the utter devastation that Brexit was causing British businesses. They also heard a cabinet minister talk about Brexit freedoms. They listened intently to the businesswoman and they laughed at the minister. They know it's bollocks. The establishment may not be changing, but the public might be. I had already talked in the past, because this wasn't a one-off, about how audiences on Question Time last year, as the year wore on, seemed to no longer be pacified by the promises of Brexit, where guests would keep trying to beat the Brexit drum and the audience weren't biting. They seem to want to see results now, and the results they're seeing are not very pleasant. And it'll be interesting to see how this attitude develops over the rest of the year. If the Conservatives want a general election in 2023, then they've got some serious deceiving to do. Or they may just have to come up with another banner to wave about, because the Brexit banner is getting a little bit tatty. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.